This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Thought in Interan Literature. Second year classics. Harvard University. Okay, hi, welcome back. In case you're not sure where you are, this is the feed for class C667, Modes of Thought in Interan Literature. And we've been going through this translation of a amazing epic saga that was discovered on Site A3, what's known as the Reed Coast Temple, and we're on Column 1, Part 2, so let's just get into it, yeah? Okay. Part 2, The Wealth of Siala. It is also said that she learned the limit of healing in the season her father was called away. Ra Siala was not only a healer of the Reed Coast, he was named among the upper houses, called to the inner courts when the idiot king's diviners required flesh to be mended without disturbing the balance of their silence. He was known not for miracle, but for measure. He did not promise life, he promised time. And for this, the noble houses trusted him more than those who spoke in incense and prophecy. In that season, a warrior of the High Line was brought inland, carried on a litter of oiled wood and woven reed. He had been struck in the side by a reef spear meant for larger things. The wound did not bleed correctly. It held. Siala opened it, closed it, opened it again. He changed poultice for paste, paste for ash, ash for binding. Nothing took. The warrior did not weaken. He did not heal. He remained. The diviners said this was a holding. The priest said this was a test. The family said nothing. On the third night, the warrior began to speak to those who were not present. On the fourth, he called for his mother, though she had been dead 10 years. On the fifth, he asked Siala, "Which part of me is being kept?" Siala did not answer. That night, The tide turned hard along the coast. The wind shifted inland, carrying the smell of deep water. The diviners sent word the sea was listening. It was decided, without being spoken in full, that the wound was no longer of flesh. At dawn, Siala left the house. He did not take tools, he did not take assistance. He took only a basin and a length of cord. Mem Ta'Hara followed him as far as the edge of the reed path. He did not tell her to stop. He said only, "Watch how this is done." They walked to the outer rocks where the tide cuts deeper than the eye can follow. The water there moved differently. It did not break. It folded. Siala stepped into it, not fully, enough. He placed the basin on the surface. It did not drift. He spoke, "This one cannot be taken cleanly." The water held. He is held between. The current tightened around his legs. If he is kept, others will follow. Mem Ta'Hara did not move. If he is released, something must answer. Siala turned to her then. "This is not healing." He lifted the cord, wrapped it once around his wrist. Mem Ta'Hara said, "You told me we do not give them what they ask." Siala answered, "We do not give them what they ask for first." Then he stepped deeper. The water reached his chest. The basin tipped. Something dark spread beneath it. The current pulled once, not outward, but downward. Siala did not struggle. He said one thing more, but the water took the words before they reached her. Then he was gone. The surface closed. Nothing rose. No body returned. When Mem Ta'Hara went back, the warrior had begun to bleed. By nightfall, he was dead. The house called it a restoration. The priests named it an answer. The diviners said nothing at all. Mem Ta'Hara stood beside the body and watched the blood move freely for the first time. No one struck her. No one spoke to her. At last she said, "He paid." And no one corrected her. That night she did not go to the sea. She did not wait. She did not ask. From that day, she no longer believed that suffering remained where it was given. She watched the houses of the High Line seal their doors before the dark. She watched the priests wash their hands longer than needed. She watched the diviners speak in halves and call it wisdom. She listened when they said the sea had been answered. She listened when they said balance had been restored. She listened and did not speak. She began to count. She counted the dead in the low quarters. She counted the children who did not wake. And she counted the empty days. The nets came back light, then lighter, then not at all. Fish gathered beyond the reef where no line would hold. The inland traders brought grain that broke to dust. when touched. The wells turned slow, not dry, but reluctant. Water that took time to become water. Women boiled rope and bitter root to give the mouth something to forget itself with. Men chewed salt and called it strength. The old began to sleep longer between waking and did not always return. No blight marked the fields. No storm took the shore. The sky did not close, it simply did not give. And those who watched closely said the same thing in different ways. Something is being kept. In the nights that followed, she slept beside the doorway instead of the hearth. Once, when a man came bleeding from the reef, she did not look at the wound first. She looked at the tide. By this carving, the coasts are filled with breath. By this carving, the islands are not forgotten. We remember Mem Ta'Hara not because she suffered, all suffer. We speak of her because she did not leave suffering where it was placed. She crossed the boundary that held the rest of us in place, like prison walls of skin and blood. What she brought back is divine and beyond knowledge, which is what we call the truth. What she changed cannot be unchanged. Remember this before the telling continues. That's the end of column 1. Here are the annotations from Beijing. Annotation 1I. This passage is widely interpreted as the first recorded instance of Ta'Hara attempting direct negotiation with the sea. It is suggested that this marks a departure from inherited ritual structures toward individualized engagement with divine systems. That is important. We're moving from a very generalized history towards a more specific and therefore human and relatable kind of history, which opens us up, I think, to a lot of misinterpretation. We can try to relate to Mem Ta'Hara, but all of this is allegory, and it's allegory through a kind of logic that was an Antaran logic and not a contemporary American logic or contemporary logic of any kind. So it's gonna feel hard to track. And I think the best example of that, just going back to the text here, is this translation of the word held and kept. It's used over and over again. Right at the beginning of this section, talking about the wound of the warrior. He had been struck in the side by a reef spear meant for larger things. The wound did not bleed correctly. It held. On first listening, we might think, oh, if the wound is holding, it's not getting worse. So that's pretty good. You know, that's the way I would think about it if somebody told me my friend was in the hospital, but they weren't bleeding. And in the Antaran logic, this is a refutation of the natural order of things. The soldier must either heal or die. It cannot be that the wound just stays, that it holds in place. And so that translation of the word held, which again, in English at least, has connotations that are kind of warm. I hold people that I love, right? Or I hold things that I'm not afraid to have close to me. In this case, it really means an unnatural stagnation, which is not healthful and is sort of contrary to divine law. It's heretical. Okay, going to the next notation here. Annotation 1J, the line "she no longer waited the same way" appears in several fragmented inscriptions across coastal sites. Scholars debate whether this indicates impatience, agency, or the early formation of what later texts describe as active burden. I don't have any information from my friends in Beijing about this phrase active burden. So I'm going to write an email and see what they mean by that. To me, the line "she no longer waited the same way" indicates impatience, frustration, and that again is the sort of individualization of history, which is, like I said, an invitation to misunderstand what this story is about. There's one more here, annotation 1K. The term translated through, okay, this goes back to what I was saying about the word held. So let's hear their thoughts on this. The term translated throughout this column as held appears in at least 6 distinct grammatical constructions in the original Antaran glyph set. So that's fascinating. There are 6 different ways to write this word. Dr. notes that the root form, ka'eth, may denote a state not easily rendered in Indo-European languages, combining suspension, preservation, and deferment. In several contexts, the term appears to describe phenomena that are neither active nor resolved, but maintained in a condition resistant to temporal progression. This is interesting, and it becomes interesting in the next column as well, when we start talking about places that seem to have time distortion or time stagnation. But yeah. Resistant to temporal progression. Professor suggests that this may reflect an Antaran cosmological category, that which is prevented from completing its natural course, and relates it to the state of temporal continuity that remains as long as Ikopa's eyes remain open. In this state, the universe is also held. So that's very fascinating. We know that Ikopa, with the 999 eyes, must remain observing the universe through at least one of those eyes at all times, or the universe will completely reset, right, according to Antaran mythology. And in that way, we are in a state of being held because we are in a state of perpetual observation. I think that's really interesting. Of course, time still seems to move forward to Antarans, and in this story and in other stories, we see that they follow a linear time, although it gets disrupted frequently. or at least our understanding of it makes it seem that way. But I think Dr. here is saying that perhaps you could look at the entire cosmology of Antera as being in a state of being held. It would mean that there's a certain sort of ambivalence about the notion of time, and that Anterans could believe two things at once, that time is linear and it is moving forward, and to have it not move forwards is against divine law, and at the same time that our universe, the Antaran universe, is in a state of abstracted time itself. It's fascinating. Okay, so we'll see more of some of these issues brought up when we go into column 2. The last thing that I'd mention about this is the notion of the famine is very understated, but that's what's setting up what is yet to come for Mem Ta'Hara and her crew. And so just to quickly look at some of the language around this famine, she began to count. She counted the dead in the low quarters. She counted the children who did not wake. The nets came back light, then lighter, then not at all. Men chewed salt and called it strength. The old began to sleep longer between waking and did not always return. So this is all referring to a famine. Because we have no normal archaeological material to work with, there's no like strata of earth that we can dig through. There's not really any biological material we can work with here. There's no way of knowing about this famine, whether it existed or not. So, we're going with it for the purposes of this story as, this is the famine that happened. Man, I wish we could find out if it really happened. That would just be amazing. But given the fact that Antera is under a whole lot of water, we're just never going to know. Okay, so that's it for this column. Email me your questions as always, and I'll keep going with column 2 next week. All right. Thank you. Modes of Thought in Antaran Literature. This podcast is made possible by Harvard University, a grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Peeler Prize in Archaeological Literature, and the Harpage Family Trust, with an in-kind donation and production assistance from Wolf at the Door Studios. For more information and a reading list, please visit modesofthoughtpodcast.com.
Sine. That's a geometric waveform or arc that rises and falls, and a new Canadian TTRPG and podcast inspired by that almost soothing mathematical motion. Let me show you. The action begins to rise as powerful strangers in a ruined yet vibrant world band together.
If you run north, they will chase you. I suggest you stand behind me.
Partner, I'd rather stand beside you if you're willing to help.
Tension continues to mount higher as our characters must push themselves beyond their usual limits.
As I'm climbing into the driver's seat, I'm gonna say to Sarah, sometimes you gotta make tough decisions. I'm driving now.
And it peaks as the danger and excitement hits its zenith, leading to great failure or success.
Fenrir would be just fire at this point.
She straight up might die. Like, this encounter might murder you.
You know what? You lit me on fire! We're gonna be on fire, baby!
And this tension relaxes with tragedy, but more often humor, that comes with great pals being around a virtual table playing a game. Discover Sign on your favorite podcast player. SINE. The choices of the characters are theirs to make, but the fate of the world is up to the dice.